It seems like people in the alternative, goth, and emo communities have always had a problem with groups and creeps who try and pretend to be into the culture and into the music and the beliefs in order to get access to young girls.
Back in the early 2000s, there were people like Davey Vanity who would use their influence and star power as a singer in order to gain popularity and create an audience of young fangirls. However, nowadays it is just as simple as creating a TikTok account in order to gain a following in the emo and alternative scene. And unfortunately, because TikTok relies so heavily on short form content, emo, alt, and goth subcultures have essentially been watered down to just the way that people dress without really looking into the politics and the deeper meaning of the music, which leads to a fundamental misunderstanding of these subcultures, and unfortunately people like this being able to rise to fame from just using these songs in their videos or just appearing a certain way.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, Vampdaddyevil, also known as Eric, which is his real name, is a pseudo-alt TikToker who is most famous for his allegations of being a groomer towards underage girls and targeting teenage girls who are struggling with their mental health and or addiction. He's specifically well known for his relationships with two popular online creators, one known as Callie the Flower Girl, and another girl known as Ray, I believe Val, who is known as Sick and Pretty. So he became kind of infamous for both of these relationships, as well as the inflammatory content that he is posting online. He is also known for allegedly starting relationships and flirting with girls who are obviously underage. We'll be discussing all of this in today's video, talking about what he has done, what he's posting online, why I believe he really should not have a platform on TikTok, and hopefully what we can do to try and prevent people like this having access to underage girls and causing irreparable damage and harm to the alt community. Now, other than the fact that he fosters this underage audience who he openly flirts with and reposts content to do with having a younger, much younger girlfriend, he also has an ex who is known to be missing and makes a lot of very tasteless jokes about how he would cut her up, or trying to elude the fact that he could be the reason why she's missing, such as posting videos where it appears that he's sharing the coordinates to a body and trying to basically come across as an edgelord. Now, he also really loves to use kinks as a guise to basically get away with being an absolute creep. And this is not the first time I've seen a guy online do this. It's so common for men to use kinks as an excuse to abuse women. So the two kinks that he specifically claims that he has are DDLG and CNC. I don't want to go in detail about these because it makes me feel a bit sick, but I will explain it as kind of PG as possible. So DGLD basically means dominant daddy little girl. It is a relationship sort of style dynamic where you'll have someone who is the like dominant dad figure and the other person who is the little girl. CNC means consensual non-consent. Now again, if it was two adults, I'm not going to tell you what to do, whatever, but it's the fact that he is openly promoting these to his underage audience. He is stating this is what he's interested in, trying to make it seem like a funny, edgy relationship dynamic to these young girls, and it's just very gross.
And I want to state that whilst I personally have my own disagreements with aspects of both of these kinks, this is not necessarily me attacking the people who do this. If you are both consenting adults, you can do whatever you want in the privacy of your home. However, what I do want to point out is that he is promoting this to an audience of underage girls, and when you look at the language that he uses in his posts about these, for example, calling CNC cookies and cream, he's purposefully referring to childish things whilst talking about an adult kink. It comes across as very intentional when you are constantly referring to things that children enjoy, like dolls, cupcakes, cookies, things like this, which are deemed as childish. Whilst researching this video, I also learned that there is a huge difference between DGLG and age regression. From what I understand, age regression is something that people do to help them cope with childhood trauma, and it is not it is something that people do to try and heal, which to me feels very strange for you to go after people like that, because it's very clear that they're using it to try and heal from trauma. It's not something that you should look for in a relationship, and we can see some of his reposts where he reposts very childish things, and a lot of the people who made these videos were pretty horrified to find out that he reposted them because they had made the videos in either a form of vent art or because they enjoyed doing age regression. And I feel like this just shows that he is involving people in his interests, in his without their consent, even when it comes to reposting content.
When he started off on his account, he wasn't necessarily trying to go after girls. In fact, when he started his social media, he actually was mainly posting general fitness content, as well as commentary on politics, which ironically was more leaning right and was pro-Trump than you would expect, considering that he claims to be alt. Pretty much his online kind of persona, his trope that he creates for himself, is essentially trying to come across as this big, dominant guy who is interested in young girls, and that is not even something he tries to hide. He tries to talk about the styles of relationships that he enjoys. But don't just take my word for it. I will show you guys some examples of the content that he makes so that we can kind of get to know him a bit more before we find out what he has done. He says stalking is a love language. Again, this has 2,300 likes. Now, that is quite a lot of likes for a take that is so problematic. And I find this really disgusting, actually, because as someone who has been stalked and it was genuinely an awful, traumatic experience, I think it's very tasteless and disgusting that you would post this and think that it's funny or edgy. And obviously, now that we're going to look into more about this guy, he genuinely does believe this. This is genuinely how he thinks. But he's also got another post here where he says, when someone tries to call me an ugly, nasty, human trash, a serial killer, vampire, you know, all these awful words, but I'm literally not ugly. And again, you know, again, this is just him trying to use edgy humor to cover up the fact that he actually is some of these things. I mean, he's not a vampire. He wishes he was a vampire, babes. You're not a vampire, definitely. Because those wrinkles, yeah, no. But everything else, yeah. I don't even think that he's a devil worshipper because I don't think he has the emotional intelligence to research a religion. Another post that he says is, when her card declines at therapy, so they bring me out, I'm the reason she flinches. Again, someone like this has such little empathy and is so disgusting that you clearly just see women as objects. You clearly do. You don't have any respect for women if you would post something like this. Now, he also claims to be attracted to when women are upset or when they're suffering, which again, from someone as demented as this, does not surprise me. So he posts here. He says, remembering the time my ex cried in my arms and that gave me a... You know, I think if you can admit something like this online, that just shows the depravity of what he actually likes. For example, he is really into the aesthetics of the book Lolita. Now, if you guys know, obviously there's a difference between Lolita the book and the fashion. As someone who is into alternative fashion, you guys probably know the book is a very dark story about a girl who is by a older man, and this girl is a child. It's really upsetting, actually. It's a very triggering book, and I don't recommend reading this unless you have the stomach to deal with a book that clearly is talking about abuse. It's a very sad story. We're going to react to a video he made about this book.
She was 14 at the time, so what?
It literally says, yeah, she was 14 at the time, so what? What? What are you talking about?
What's the downside of her staying with... What's the downside of Lolita staying with Humbert when literally everything
claims, oh, what's wrong with Lolita staying with Humbert? The problem with her staying with him is that he is a... The bad things that happen to her is when she's assaulted by him. And the fact that you can't see that just shows that you are part of the problem. Like, and it's interesting because it's a very ironic situation with him talking about this book. Because if you don't know, the book was written actually as a critique of the person describing it, of Humbert. Humbert is meant to be an unreliable narrator. The whole story is meant to be about how he sees this child as kind of being precocious and things like this, and she clearly isn't. She's just a child. And it's so disgusting that he can't see that. He clearly is just demented. The book is about abuse. The book never frames it as a love story. It's not. It's actually a story about how this poor girl was treated awfully, and it basically ruined her life.
If and women in general would have done what they were told in the book, yes, had to
if she had have done what she was told. Viewing some of his other posts, he also seems to have an obsession with dolls. So he says here, this is what a doll without its hands or feet could look like. Very pretty and has value. It needs you to do everything for them, now totally dependent. but that's when they're the most beautiful for me. I also feel like his obsession with dolls isn't just him just genuinely being creepy and trying to see women as like objectifying women and seeing them as dolls. I also think it's because he knows people in the alt community like dolls, they like cute things, especially because he's been known to go after people in like the kawaii fashion community, which again, you guys know that is like a trope. Like a lot of girls in this community like dolls. As we know it, Eric has been in 3 different problematic relationships that we know of. We don't know about a lot of them because obviously he doesn't post everything online. I can't assume. So we're going to start off with Callie. He talked about his relationship with her in an 8-part series on his TikTok. Now, if you don't know who Callie is, I'll quickly give you a summary about Callie before we go into detail about his creepy obsession with her. So Callie is also known as Callie the Flower Girl. Now, she is already like a very popular creator on TikTok. She became viral for making room cleaning videos. And I really do feel for Callie. Like, she started off making videos when she was probably 16, 17 years old, maybe younger. And she was making TikTok videos cleaning her house. She grew up in a very awful situation. She grew up in a house that was extremely dirty and old. So of course she ended up really struggling mentally, and she relied on TikTok donations to try and clean the house and get out of that situation. Now, tragically, Callie ended up in an abusive relationship with another man before this called Preston, who actually ended up going to prison for how he treated her.
It's also worth mentioning that Preston also had his own allegations far beyond when he started dating Callie, so she already was in a relationship that constituted as gruesome, unfortunately, before she met Eric. OP posts that she was 14 years old when Preston was 18 to 19 when he groomed her, and it's also worth noting that Callie was between 16 to 19 years old when she was in a relationship with Preston, who was already in his 20s.
How did we meet? He watched my TikToks when I was 16.
And she also was struggling with addiction throughout this and just going through a lot. It's a very sad situation. And, you know, I do know a lot of people have claimed that Callie has also tried to scam her followers, which I definitely don't condone. But I do think it's extremely upsetting to see a young girl be treated like this. It's very upsetting to see. And honestly, I feel awful for Callie. I hope that she gets the help she deserves. And I would never sit here and make fun of a like teenage girl who's gone through an addiction. I think that is a traumatic thing to go through, which makes what Eric does so much worse. The fact that he goes after this girl who is clearly in active addiction, and he knows that she's vulnerable, so he can take advantage of her.
In this post, Eric states that he wants to have ownership and control over Callie and quote-unquote keep her like a pet, which he considers a good and mutually beneficial thing. And he makes multiple posts about Callie before they even meet, talking about how he thinks he can help her, how wonderful he thinks that the relationship would be, printing out photos of her and drawing on them with crayons, as well as putting them next to collars and other accessories. And the reason he does this is actually more disturbing than you might think. I'll be covering that later on in this video. And as well as this very creepy behavior, he would also send her messages trying to come across as endearing, saying, "I'm sorry if I scared you, you seem like an amazing girl," which obviously is just him trying to get on her good side, but I guess it worked.
He decided to have her try and stay at his house. So he realized that her ex, Preston, had to go to prison because he was abusing her, and he saw this as his chance to basically take advantage of her. And he even stated this on his TikTok. He was like, you know, I think this is my chance. She's the perfect victim. So what he ended up doing was he essentially ended up having to drive all the way to collect her, booking a hotel room, trying to kind of get himself into her life as much as he could. And this even included him asking her to stay at his house. And it turns out his house is actually a tip. It's extremely messy. So she had to actually clean his house in an ironic turn of events, considering she grew up making these cleaning my awful house videos. So it's kind of an ironic situation that he would make her clean his house when he offered it as a safe space. And I think it's pretty obvious that he never was offering a safe space from the get-go. He was having her basically do sexual things for him. He was filming her doing sexual things for him without her consent, allegedly. And she was also drinking and taking to his house, which he was allowing, considering the fact she wasn't even over the legal drinking age. So already he's doing something illegal without even considering the fact of the age gap and all of this stuff.
And you can see their interactions in this TikTok live that Callie posted. I do just want to put another trigger warning for this because it is just very upsetting to watch. It's clear that Callie is on something, whether that is alcohol or drugs. And yeah, it's just a very uncomfortable video, but it does kind of prove the point.
It's usually the time I'm awake. I slept pretty good in the car. Am I okay? No.
So other than what you can see where Callie is clearly slurring her words and is under the influence of something, the other thing I want to point out is that they discuss how Eric is posting something on X or Twitter, and he discusses posting this adult content whilst Callie doesn't really seem aware that he is doing this.
But speaking of X, yeah, I posted some rather intimate things of her if you want to go search it there.
The whole video is just very uncomfortable to watch, and it becomes very apparent that he is just trying to promote the adult content that he made with her while she is just sitting around completely out of it. And I just can't understand how someone could do that to someone when they are clearly struggling with an addiction, and you see that as a reason to make adult content with them. Like, what?
He was already doing something illegal from the get-go. So he had her stay at his house, he had her drinking, he had her doing drugs, and he took advantage of her. And I truly feel awful for Callie in this situation because, again, I'm not saying she's a perfect person. I don't think anyone is in that type of situation. But I do just want to say it is pretty downright disgusting to take advantage of a young girl who is going through something like that, who is essentially homeless, dealing with an addiction, having an ex-partner, and you have the audacity to go after her and pretend that you're interested in her from a loving perspective when you just want to take advantage of her. It's just disgusting.
But it turns out that this is actually part of his twisted fantasy, because when he was creating these weird chalk photos of Callie, there was actually a deeper meaning behind it.
So anyway, the story that he references that he is trying to recreate with her is about a woman who is called Amira Lavi, who in real life was a drug addict who was homeless and very unwell. And Lucifer Valentine took in and vouched to nurse her back to health as long as he could do whatever he wanted to her. Which is very upsetting because, again, it's just manipulating a situation. It's not like you actually love that person, you're just using them for what you want. Lucifer Valentine is very well known for his crayon film covers. That's how a lot of people see him stylize his films and his stories. And this is what Eric tried to imitate on the photos of Callie. He basically did this crayon drawing, kind of seeing her as like a victim, which is so creepy. And in one of these drawings, he writes "doll soft" on her, which I just think is very disturbing to write on someone's photo. It's very creepy, and I think that's kind of intentional. Like, he wants to give off that uncomfortable vibe, which is just bizarre.
And he has also been known to publicly defend Lucifer Valentine, saying that he thinks that the consensual relationship that he shared with Amira was cute. So yeah, I guess he obviously just calls people haters if they don't agree with him, because there's not really much other defense he can have, really. Now, I did not want to test my sanity by watching this movie whilst creating this video, so I did read the Wikipedia page about it to try and get an idea, and it seems like it is just torture corn, basically, which doesn't surprise me, and all of the reviews for this movie are pretty negative in general, other than the fact that this is a movie that clearly focuses on showing women as weak and scared and being berated and insulted, which is horrible. It also has a focus on vomit, and if you don't know, Callie is famous for having emetophobia, which I believe is the fear of vomiting. So other than all of the other horrible things that are featured in this film, I thought that it was very sadistic, actually, that he would reference this film when it has something that she clearly is afraid of and struggles with.
Now with the rest of Eric's relationships, things did not get better. He also went after another popular creator called Sick and Pretty, also known as Val or Ray. I think I'm going to call her Ray just for the sake of like not getting confused with names. And Ray was under 18 when they engaged in a DDLD roleplay together.
And here we have a screenshot where he is telling her to be good for him and crashing out, saying, "Remember what happened last time you tried moving on with another guy?" And here he is trying to impress her by buying her Robux. I don't think I need to say anything else. He says, I want to spoil my little girl. Seems like a large part of the relationship was him crashing out, trying to get her attention, and ultimately behaving like a creep like he does in his other relationships with these girls.
Now, when talking about his relationship with Ray, he also talks about how he wanted to groom her. This is confirmed. You look at the screenshot of the message that he sent her, which again is a crazy thing to say to someone who is literally underage. I don't even want to read what he says in this message. It's just absolutely vile. I would just put it on screen for you guys to have a look. And when she became 18, he immediately subscribed to her OnlyFans when she made one.
Something weird that he would do with both Ray and Callie is document what they were doing. So for example, when Ray made the OnlyFans, he would discuss how much money she was making, which is just a weird thing to do in general. Like, why are you posting about them in that way? Maybe in a sick sense, he felt like it was showing that she should do sexual content and it was kind of justifying the fact that he wanted her to, but it's just weird behavior.
He's just kind of again doing this creepy obsession thing again with these young girls. And he knew that she was 17 because, again, she has all over her profile. She's quite a big figure, I think. And again, I do just want to state that Ray, again, is not necessarily a good person. I did see some leaked images of Ray actually saying some horrible things. Like, I think she actually said the N-word, and she said some horrible things to do with, like, being an artist, which I think is disgusting. But again, I never would condone someone being groomed. You could be the most evil person ever. I still don't think you deserve to be. I don't think anyone should have to go through that. It's disgusting. So yeah, and essentially his relationship with Ray ended pretty quickly. It was mainly just him being obsessed with her, and he got blocked by her. And I'm pretty sure she unblocked him after a bit, but yeah, she blocked him. So that was one of his other relationships with another girl. And I want to stress this in this video. These are the only relationships that we know about publicly, because if ever you go through the comments of people talking about this creator, talking about like Vampdaddyevil, you get so many girls saying how actually he's messaged them, he's tried to contact them, and these are people who have their age explicitly in their bio, including someone who is 16 years old, people as young as 15, 14 that he has tried to message. So this is someone who genuinely is trying his best to communicate with underage people, and he's not even trying to hide it. He's just trying to pretend that it's edgy humor, pretend that it's all just a joke. But how are we supposed to see it as a joke when we can see the obvious proof of you having these relationships with people in real life, and it's clearly not a joke to you?
And here is an example of him following a 14-year-old, and considering his interests, I just can't believe that he has pure intentions following someone who is this young. It just feels like there is a darker intention behind this. And here is an example of someone who allegedly had Eric trying to contact them since they were 15 years old.
However, by far the most incriminating relationship that he actually had was with a girl called Katrina. Now, Katrina was only 15 when they were talking, and again, we're talking about explicit conversations that they were having, and he claimed, after this came out online, after the backlash, he claimed that she lied about her age, but it became very clear you could find her age through her profile. It's pretty obvious that she was extremely young. And he tried to justify this by saying, oh, well, she's just ugly and whatever. And I find it very telling response whenever they talk about what they went through, or the fact that actually they were underage, or he did something that they found really uncomfortable. His immediate response is to just say that they're ugly.
And I really do feel awful for Katrina in this situation, because she discusses how she has to wake up to seeing him posting fake messages and pretending that she lied, when in reality she is a victim. And my heart really does go out to her, and I hope that she is getting the support that she needs, and that she knows she is very strong to come out with this, because it is not easy to talk about these things online. It never is.
I really did try to go through his Twitter account as well to include in this video, and obviously the fact that he's creating adult content with someone who is clearly under the influence of drugs and alcohol is completely disgusting, and I'm pretty sure he had to actually end up deleting this content. Some of the things that he reposts, he's also very transphobic, and I feel like this is something no one's really talking about. It's definitely far right kind of like humor. which I find really horrible to look at personally. And he also referenced something else, which is a really dark Japanese anime, which is called The Camellia Girl. And there's also a manga about it called Mr. Arashi's Amazing Freak Show. Now, this is a really dark piece of media. It is a eroguro, which means erotic. It's extremely dark, and it's probably one of the most like horrific movies I personally have ever had to see. It's a very upsetting story. In the same way that I did state for, I want to state very, very clearly that this is a story that is meant to be a horror story. It's not meant to be a happy love story. But this is a story about a 12-year-old girl named Midori, and her mother dies, and she gets tricked into joining a traveling freak show. And during this, she faces a lot of cruelty from all of the different circus performers, which includes but isn't just limited to abuse. And it's just a very awful and sad story, which I honestly would not recommend that you watch this. And the character that he reposts from this movie is the character that is a known predator on the main character, the 12-year-old girl main character. And he reposts a thirst trap of this character. And someone commented on this video that he reposted, they said, "You know that character is a right?" And he said, "If villain, then why hot?" Which just shows you the level of just depravity that this man is at, that he genuinely just thinks this is funny or this is acceptable to talk about. It's disgusting. Again, it's not really a surprise that he referenced this movie or anime because it's actually an anime that is obviously about a girl who is an orphan. She doesn't have anyone to rely on, and again, she has to rely on people who take advantage of her. And that seems to be a theme with what he likes. He likes media that centers around seeing women being taken advantage of, and not even just women, but girls being taken advantage of. It's really disgusting. And anyone who likes this movie and isn't saying that they find it horrifying and upsetting and they think it's, you know, a thought piece about how awfully like girls can be treated. If you like this film and you think it's funny, or you just like it for the edge factor, I'm just going to assume that you're a horrible person. But the director of this film, Harada, actually does talk about the fact that he made this film because he was a victim of bullying as a child, and that's one of the reasons why he made a lot of his films. And he actually also made Doraemon, just a side topic, it's kind of random. But anyway, so it's kind of a story that has like a deeper meaning, and I don't know if it really should be made. That's a topic for another video. But again, if you're going to say you like this film, I'm going to assume that you either like it for one of two reasons. Either you have seen the fact that it shows it in a horrific way, and the fact that we should never treat people like that, and you're obviously like on that camp, or you're an absolute weirdo like this guy. You think that this is a relationship standard, which is like a horror movie. And he also reposts this other thing that says, "One man's psych ward patient is another man's all she's ever wanted." And his X account also has more images of girls who are missing limbs, with like a muscular guy like giving her food, which again is just like disgusting. I don't know how, I literally don't know what else to say about this. Like, I don't have much else commentary wise other than just saying, like, you know, this is really a vile way to view relationships. The final thing that I do want to mention about this person is that he also claims to be alternative. I don't think that anything about him is alternative. I think that the fact that he uses alt music despite being right leaning is ironic at best and probably pathetic, in my opinion. He also claims to be goth, which again, you guys know I've made videos on Instagram about how goth is a music and politics based subculture. You're listening to the music, but you're not understanding what it means. You're not listening to the lyrics, because punk, goth, emo, all of these subcultures are based in being anti-establishment and being anti-authority. They're also very radical. They're about accepting people who have been marginalized by society, and that includes women who've been treated awfully. That includes people who are trans, people who are LGBTQ. So the fact that he is going around and treating women like this is the opposite of alternative. I would say it is the opposite of everything that he claims to stand for. And he is just a poser. He is absolutely just a poser. Nothing positive that I can say about this person. He pretends he likes alternative culture, but he doesn't understand it. And I wish that the police in America would do more about him, because it's very obvious that he is an active threat to young girls. But yeah, that is the situation with Vampdaddyevil, or Eric. I really hope that this video was educational, and I really hope that we can hopefully try and get him to be deplatformed, because as much as I believe in freedom of speech, sometimes it gets to the point where it's like, if you are harming young girls, if you are actively trying to groom people, you should not have a platform. So that is my opinion on this topic. I really wanted to have an opinion and weigh in on it as someone who is alternative, so I really hope that it was interesting to watch. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. And please do let me know your thoughts. What do you think we can actually do to stop someone like this, if anything? I'd really like to know.
And I want to leave you guys with a quote by Nirvana from their song In Bloom, which is, "He's the one who likes all our pretty songs, and he knows not what it means."